about this. So we're gonna give us some context as my next slide. So, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm seeing these slides for the first time. I made them and they were super boring and they just made them really pretty. So I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. Okay, so God's people, Israel, they're sent into exile away from their own land. And God did this very specifically. He did it because of the sin of idolatry. So what is idolatry, right? Idolatry is the worship of other gods. So they were living in the land that God gave them. But instead of worshiping God, instead of giving their desire, their heart, their attention, their time to God, they start giving it to these other gods. And so what are these other gods? People around the Israelites, they worshipped gods of agriculture. Gods like, oh, let's worship the weather god to give us good weather because we need, good crops, right? And so and let's worship the god of fertility to make us like fruitful. We'll have abundance. We'll have all this stuff that we need. And so other nations around Israel worship these other gods, and they thought that when these gods, when two nations fought with each other, that the gods were fighting. So if your country beat the other country in war, that meant that your God was stronger. And that's going to be really important in a minute. I'm going to show you guys. So in our time, how does this look? What does this look like? Like, is this just a crazy thing? Like, oh, they worship these things because they were uneducated and they didn't know about science like we do today, and so they had all these crazy thoughts. But what do we worship today? I mean, what do we give our attention to? What do we give our time to, right? Like, what do we give our heart to? And we see that people around us very quickly, very easily will give their time, their attention, their focus to money, to fame, to success, to entertainment, to appearance, to themselves, right? We are the selfie generation, right? You guys understand this. And to false ideologies, like, oh, I'm going to take this one idea and I'm going to make it the supreme thing that I believe in and worship, right? And you see people do that. People take ideas about, about the environment, let's say, like, oh, we need to save the planet, and that's what they worship, and that's what they spend their whole time on, right? And I'm not saying these things are bad. I'm not saying it's bad to think about where your next meal is going to come from. It's not bad to look put together or to look nice. It's not bad to have ideas or to want to treat the earth well, right? But these things aren't worthy of our worship, right? They're not worthy of who we are. They're not worthy of us putting our identity into these things, right? And so this is, why do I tell you this, right? Because the world around us is worshiping other things, and the spiritual enemies of God are still very much alive and active in our world today, right? So this isn't just like, oh, they believed in these weird spirits. It's like, no, like the spiritual world is still alive and active. And we don't think about it the same way, we don't talk about it the same way, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing of the enemies of God trying to push back against the people of God who are trying to do what he wants them to do. So back to our story, Daniel 1:1-2, that's the next slide. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, I'm going to read it from here. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Okay, so we see the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Who was that? Random dude, you don't need to know, it's okay, but he was the king of the people of Israel, right? And so the Babylonian kings took stuff from God's house and they took it to their house. And they said, ha, look at me. I have conquered the land of Israel. I have conquered these people. I have taken the stuff from the house of their God and I've put it in the house of my God. I am better. My gods are better than these people and their puny God who I just defeated. Right? That was their mindset. That was how they thought. But this text is going to be very careful to say, hey, look, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. So what's happening here? The God of Israel has decided to allow his people to be taken captive because they need to learn a lesson, because they need to learn how to worship God, how to give their whole heart, their whole mind, their attention to God, to the true God, right? The God of Israel. And so the God of Israel is still in control, even in this situation of chaos, of warfare, this crazy time. So what does exile look like, right? What's going to happen to these people who now have been taken into exile? So let's read Daniel 1:3-4. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, to teach them the literature and language of the Babylonians. So who are these people? Youths without blemish. Who is that? That's roughly 14 to 17-year-olds. So that's y'all, just letting you know. If the king of Babylon walked in here and was looking for new servants, he'd go, take all of these people, right? This is the age group. And then who else? Of good appearance. So we've got skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge. That's people who are educated. That's people who are smart. Essentially, that's people who've been well-fed and who look good. So again, that's y'all. Okay, so y'all look good. Just saying. And then the next slide, the king, Daniel 1:5, the king assigned them a daily portion of food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time, they were to stand before the king. So why does he do this? The king's food, that's the best food that there is. That's the best food possible. The king doesn't eat bad food. So he needs good servants, not only smart, not only good looking, but who are also loyal to Babylon and to its gods. So what's happening here is essentially a very slow and long brainwashing process. Okay, so they're going to be educated for 3 years. They're going to learn all of the literature and the language of the Babylonians. They're going to learn how the Babylonians think, how they feel, how they act, what they believe in. And it's not going to be like, so again, this is good food. And think parties. Think, let's go have a good time. This is a bright future, a good education. This is, come to Babylon, come with us. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. No one's holding a knife to their throat or a gun to their head and saying, don't worship the God of Israel. You need to stop being Jewish now. Nobody's doing that. What's happening, you can keep your old beliefs. You can worship the God of Israel. That's fine. If you want to worship the God who lost to our God, that's fine. But you can also come worship our gods. Like come with us. Come drink wine with us, right? And look, we'll even give you new awesome Babylonian names just so you can fit in. That's the next verse. Daniel 1:6-7. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. So the Jewish names in this passage are names that give glory to God. They're about the worship of the God of Israel. And all of the Babylonian names are names that give glory to the gods of Babylon. So we've got Bel, we've got Nego, we've got Shah, we've got the sun god. This is identity theft, right? This is like, okay, you don't need your Jewish identity anymore. That's okay. Here's your new identity. Here's a new god that you're going to worship. So a little bit about my story. I'm gonna interlude. Megan, 18-year-old Megan, is going to college. Just came out of this little tiny, very Christian school. Everyone in this school was Christian, was missionaries. Really, like, I'd never met an atheist before in my life. I'd met Muslim people, but I'd never met atheists. That was a whole nother ballgame for me. And I'm here at a school at UC Davis of 35,000 students. Okay, so the size. And I've never really lived in America before, so I'm getting used to all sorts of new things. Basically, this situation. And there's the party scene over here, and the sororities and the fraternities, and I know people on my floor. I'm on a floor in the dorms with about 50 other people, and I know 2 other girls who are Christians. I just met them my first week of college, and that's the only people that I know right now at this point who are Christians in my town. And I live on a floor with 50 other people who don't believe in Jesus, who don't know him. And it was intimidating, to say the least. It was a lot. It was overwhelming. And I knew the people on my floor that I could go to if I wanted to get invited to a party. I knew the people on my floor that I could go to. And this wasn't like I tried to get to know them. This was just like, you just know, like, oh, if I wanted to go to a party, go talk to that person, right? There were a million different student clubs that are all trying to advertise and get you to come to their club and get you to, come and like do stuff with them and really to think, like each club had their kind of their own way of thinking, right? And so once you joined that club, you knew that you would be influenced by those people. You knew that you would start to think the way that they thought, because that would be your community. That would be what happened. There were a million Christian clubs even, and there were some creepy people at some of the Christian clubs. Like, you had to be careful. It was wild. And then you had your classes, and you had your professors, and you had your classmates, and they were all had their own ways of thinking, and they were also going to try to influence you to think the way that they thought, right? And again, no one's holding a knife to your throat or a gun to your head and telling you to stop being a Christian or to, reject your own beliefs. But what is happening? You can keep your Christian beliefs, but maybe just let go of the ones that we think are intolerant or judgmental or prejudiced. Okay. What else? Oh, of course you can go. Of course you can be a Christian and also go to a party and get drunk and sleep with someone you've never met. Like totally. That's fine. Just come to the party, right? Or like, science has clearly disproved the possibility of the virgin birth of Jesus. So if you still believe in that, you're clearly stupid. It's just stuff like that, right? It just sort of comes at you. And I knew it would be very easy for me to get swept away, to give my heart and my attention and my mind to find belonging and to find security and to find my safety and my identity in any of these other things. Because it looks like, my faith can't offer me any kind of protection in this situation. It looks like my faith can't give me the success that I need or the value that I need in this kind of environment. And so I need to find one of these things, and I need to find them fast, that's going to give me that protection, that's going to give me a sense of safety, that's going to give me a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, right? And so that's the temptation. That's the thought process. Let's overwhelm you, and then let's and then go find something that's going to help you feel like you're still alive and you're still a human. So I had to figure this out. One thing that helped me as I went was the story of Daniel. So what did Daniel do? Let's go to the next slide. Daniel 1, 8-9. And I promise I will finish the story. We'll get there. Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. So Daniel resolved. He made a decision ahead of time. Before he got to this place, before he got to the place where someone was asking him to do something he felt uncomfortable with, he resolved in himself that he was going to be faithful to the worship of the God of Israel. And he decided that the God of Israel was better than these other gods. Like he had to come to that conclusion that the God of Israel was going to be better. The God of Israel had something better to offer than any of these other things that the world has to offer. And so this resulted, in Daniel's situation, this resulted in him drawing a line in the sand in one particular place. So he decided that he didn't want to eat the king's food. And we actually don't know why this was where he drew the line. We don't know why he decided that he didn't want to eat the king's food, but it says that this is what he did. And then how did he draw this line? He said he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. Okay, so he didn't start a riot. He didn't get on the internet and start typing angry comments on internet articles. He very politely drew a line in the sand. He very respectfully went to the chief of the eunuchs and said, "Can you help me? I really don't want to eat this food here. It's my conviction." We know that he made this decision because he wanted to worship God. And so, and then it says that God gave, again, so the Lord gave Israel into the hand of the Babylonians, and then God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. So even in Babylon, right, God is still in control. Even in Babylon, God is blessing them. And so Daniel asks for permission to just, he says, okay, just test us for 10 days. Give us vegetables and water for 10 days, and just see what happens. And if it doesn't look good for you, and if it's going to be a problem for you, then we'll go back. It's okay. So what happened? In Daniel 1, 14-16, It says, so he listened, so he, being the chief of the eunuchs, listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh, oh my gosh, than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So guys, this is a miracle, right? So if you've ever heard of the Daniel fast, or anyone who's like, I'm just going to eat vegetables and water for 10 days, it's going to be great. You're not going to look like Daniel did. You're not going to get buff. You're not going to look good. You're going to get like shriveled and skinny. So basically what happens here is a miracle, right? So God blesses them. He says, you know what? You've taken a stand to honor me in a very high-risk situation, right? So Daniel and his friends could have lost their heads over this business of not eating the king's food. Like, it could have been like, oh, you don't want to eat the king's food? You're done. You're gone. You're out of here. Your body will never be found. Like, that could have been the situation. And God says, no. I'm going to give them favor. I'm going to give them compassion. And God keeps blessing them. Daniel 1:17-19. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time, when the king commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all of them none were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king. So again, God gave. Right? This is the blessing of God on Daniel. God is still in control, even in Babylon, and he wanted to use them in a specific way. He put them in a position where they could honor him, right? So let's look at the last line of the chapter, Daniel 1:20-21. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. Okay, so 10 times better. That's insane. If you're 10 times better than everybody else in your class, like, you should be in college right now. Like, that's wild, right? But this is what God gives. What God gives is so much better than what the world offers, right? And here's the thing. Here's the catch. There's blessing for Daniel. That doesn't mean that there will always be blessing for everyone who stands up for God, right? We know that that's not the case. And let me show you, even from this verse, it says Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. So God elevated Daniel within the Babylonian system. But what did Daniel want? He probably just wanted to go home. He probably just wanted to be back in his home country with his people who worshiped God and just chill out, you know? And here he is in a foreign country among foreign people with a foreign language until he dies. Okay, so the first year of King Cyrus, that's like 4 kings later. We're at King Nebuchadnezzar. There's 4 kings. Daniel's there the entire time. And if you read the book of Daniel, there's stories upon stories of what God does through Daniel. And so what we realize here is that doing what God has us to do doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get what we want, that it's going to work out for us, that's going to be great. And the reason I say that is because that wasn't what happened for me either. Things didn't go quite like I expected them to go in college. College was a lot harder than I expected, honestly, both emotionally and academically. I came in, I was really I was so on fire for Jesus in so many ways. I was sharing the gospel with my friends in college. You can go to the next slide. It's the purple hat interlude. How I wound up wearing this purple hat to college for 10 weeks and what it has to do with staying faithful to Jesus while living in Babylon, i.e. UC Davis. I didn't have to draw a line in the sand the same way that Daniel did, right? I live in a much freer country, praise God, and no one's expecting me to stand before the government. No one's like, I'm not going to die if I decide to not do something that I'm not comfortable with. But I did have to find Christian community, right? I had to keep reading my Bible. I had to pray. I had to find other Christians to pray with. And this is daunting, right? This is daunting to do as an adult for the first time in your life. By yourself, right? Like, you guys have this sort of set up for you with your families when you live at home, right? Your parents believe in God. They take you to church. You read the Bible together. You read the Bible at church. You pray with people at church. Like, that's how it works. So when you're on your own, you have to go find that. But this isn't, and I want to stress this. this isn't anything extraordinary. The fact that I did those things was just part of keeping my faith in college as a Christian. If you want to keep your faith for the rest of your life, if you want to stay connected to Jesus and keep worshiping Jesus, you will need to find community. You will need to find people who also believe in Jesus like you do, and you will need to keep reading your Bible. You're going to need to keep praying, and be able to do it without anyone telling you to do it, without anyone reminding you to do it. That's just part of keeping your faith. So in a lot of ways, for me, that wasn't very extraordinary. That was just me surviving and keeping my faith in college. But then one day, something interesting happened that I never expected and never would have planned on. And it's not a very big thing, but it taught me a big lesson. So one day at the beginning of my third year, I had joined a campus ministry, a Christian ministry on campus. It's called Crew. And in my third year, I was starting to lead a little bit in some of the events. And so I emceed an event that was welcoming new students. And I was getting ready for the event, and I was leaving my house, and I had this purple hat, and it was given to me in Kazakhstan at my graduation. Very special, very like a memento of my high school years, the time I spent in Kazakhstan. That is a traditional male Kazakh hat. I would never wear it in Kazakhstan because it's a male hat. And the female hats are tall and pointy and have feathers sticking out the top, so we're not going to wear that either. So here's this hat, and it's on my shelf in a place where I see it every day. And the Lord just says to me, take the hat and wear it. And I'm like, I'm gonna wear the hat? Like, in front of how many people? You know, and I'm emceeing this event, right? So people are gonna think I'm weird. I was like, okay, I gotta wear the hat. So I take the hat, I put it on. I don't even know why I'm wearing it. I just know the Lord told me to wear this hat. And I'm up there emceeing, and I go, guys, it came to me. I was like, I moved here from Kazakhstan 2 years ago. At the time, it was 2 years ago. And I didn't know what I was doing here, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know where I had landed, but I knew that God had put me here, and I know that that's true of each person here. And so I just told them, like, God has a purpose for you. God has you here for a reason. And everyone afterwards, all my friends were like, hey, Megan, you should keep wearing the hat. It's fantastic. And I was like, if you want to wear this hat around campus, you can, but, like, I'm not wearing this hat around campus. Literally the next morning, I wake up, and it's like, Megan, you need to wear the hat. And I was like, what? I'm wearing this hat to class? Like, I've got professors, I've got classmates, I've got people I got to get along with. I'm going to be wearing this hat. And I took the hat and I wore it. And I ended up literally every morning, I'd be like, I'm not wearing the hat. And the Lord would be like, you're wearing the hat. Like, that's what you need to do. And people start looking at you weird, right? Like, you're walking down the hallway and people, they just kind of look at you like, what's with the hat, right? And you like raise your hand in class to like answer a question, and the professor does like a double take, like, what are they wearing on their head? You know, I would literally forget what I was gonna say in class because like the professor was staring at me, you know, I'd be like, oh, never mind, okay, I don't have anything to say. And but what ended up happening was this hat became a visible marker of difference. And so when I first went to college, people would ask me where I was from. I didn't even want to tell them that I moved from Kazakhstan because I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to blend in. I wanted to look like everybody else. So I would tell people that I was from the Bay Area because that's where my family was from. And I'd say, yeah, I'm from the Bay Area. And then they'd keep asking questions like, oh, like, what high school did you go to? And I'd be like, oh, no, I went to high school in Kazakhstan, you know. And then there'd be this whole conversation around that. But it was always this source of tension, and I just never wanted to stand out. And here the Lord's saying, you're going to stand out for a reason because you're different for a reason, and I made you different for a reason. And you have to stand out. Like, you have to be different than the world around you if you're going to represent Jesus. The thing is, if you look the same as the world around you, if you are doing everything the world is doing, you have nothing better to offer the world than what the world already has, right? There's nothing for you to give. And so when we step out and we're willing to be different, we get to offer the world something that the world doesn't have, right? Which is Jesus, which is the blessing of living a life that is worshiping and devoting to God. Pastor Mark in the big church a couple weeks ago, he said, if you belong to Jesus, you don't belong to the world. And that means that you're never going to fit in with the world as much as you try. And so you can stop trying. Like, it's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be who God made you to be. And it's okay to be, to live a life as a Christian that's different from what the world might expect, from what your peers are doing, from what's going on around you. So where do we draw the line? What does this look like? I want to show you guys a video. It's from the Bible Project. It's literally called Where Do You Draw the Line? because it's really tricky to figure out, right? And it's going to be different for each one of you, right? So Daniel drew the line with the food, but maybe he had peers who drew the line with the name. They're like, you're not calling me that, you know? Like, we don't know where other people drew the line. That was where Daniel drew the line. And so where you draw your line isn't going to be the same as where the person next to you draws your line, right? And so we have this freedom to live out our faith in a way that's unique to us, in a way that makes sense for us, right? And so if you want to cue up the video, this video is about the story of Daniel, and it's called Where Do You Draw the Line? My last bit is just to ask you guys a couple questions that you guys can walk away with. For yourself, and this is for you to pray about, have you resolved to be faithful to worship God while you live in Babylon? And then what do you need to do to live out this resolve, and where will you draw the line? Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.